thanks for coming. My name's Sam Bleakley, and so to start with, just a massive thanks to Chris and Teresa and 10 Over Surf, and obviously this is a celebration of the launch of the Volume 2 of Longboarder magazine. So thanks 10 Over for having us. And massive thanks as well to other sponsors. Foam Life have just rocked up with some fantastic stuff. Of course, Rip Curl, 10 Over, which we're in right now, Finisterre, Mermaid Gin, Union of Surf, The Wave Project, and Oxbow, and Sound of Sunday, which we'll be hearing some tunes from afterwards. So we're going to talk for about half an hour, and then we're going to do the raffle. So hopefully you'll win some cool prizes. There's lots of different cool prizes. And I'm the editor of the magazine, so I had the joy of seeing the first version of this today. Obviously we did the Volume 1 last year, so this is a special moment to see Volume 2. And this is Nathan Benham, this is Lola Bleakley, this is Lucia Griggy, this is Bella Rose Bunce, and this is Luke Gartside. So these are a nice collective of really great creatives and wonderful people who not only surf well but film, make and photograph and do fantastic writing. And Chris thought it'd be lovely to just have the opportunity for me to pose a few questions to everybody, just to kind of get some insight in the creation of this magazine and also just their own kind of creative output. So I'm going to start with Bella, because Bella is the photographer who took the photo of Izzy Henshall on the cover. So that's really special. So Bella, is this your first cover shot on a magazine?
Yeah.
And tell us about then the surfer and the process of getting that fantastic photo.
So, yeah, that was very unintentional for it to go anywhere. This is Izzy, which actually, she's the first woman I ever shot in water 3 or 4 years ago. She was like 17, and it was like COVID times, and her dad was like, yeah, you can go with these randos, and then we dropped her back to college. And then since, we've just been trying to shoot together ever since, and that was just a random morning last summer, I think, and it was maybe about this big waves at Sandy Acres closeout, but when you shoot with Izzy Henshall, it doesn't really matter what you're shooting. It comes out quite good, and that was one of the ones that came out from it, and like, I didn't even think of anything of that shot, but you must have seen it and been like, wow, that's pretty good.
It's a beautiful shot. And so Bella's got a really nice feature on Mexico in the magazine. And so one of the things that's evident in your work, Bella, which you can see in this feature, is fantastic shots of Cassia Meador and Beth Layfield, your good friend. So you work a lot with female longboarders. And tell us about the female longboard movement in Cornwall and why it's exciting to be documenting that at the moment.
Well, the female longboard community, it's growing a lot now. It was maybe like, from speaking to people who have been more in it than I have, it's only really been something that's grown in the past 5 years, and a lot from the women in Senon, like Lola and Sylvie and Izzy and stuff, like pioneering the way for it. And then there's Beth and Emily and Samantha and Alana and everyone else who doesn't compete or just enjoys it for fun as well. But compared to other countries, it's really a very small group of women who dedicate everything to longboarding and don't switch out for a shortboard because they're told to, or things like that. And shooting the female longboard community is just so fun down here, because you like jump in and then sometimes you swap and they take your camera and you go for a surf, and it's just really nice and really collaborative and really easy to shoot because it's just a lot of fun and there's no pressure, and yeah.
And so how special is it for your own self-confidence and creative output to have like a cover shot on a magazine? Has that been an aspiration of yours since you started to have photos published online and in print in the last kind of 8 years, 6-8 years?
I think as a surf photographer, because there's annoyingly a lot of ego in it, being a surf photographer, obviously you like the idea of having a cover shot, and you've had some cover shots as well, that is like the creme de la creme. In surfing, the creme de la creme is having a hang 10 or getting a barrel, and then as a surf photographer, it's getting a cover shot. And rarely is it ever women that are cover shots, and rarely is it ever women longboarding that is cover shots. So it's pretty like epic and means a lot. And especially this came at a time where I was starting to like loosen my ties with the surf industry and be a bit lost in where I was with it because it's hard, and especially as women, and like just the grind of doing it. And then this came, I was like, okay, maybe I am good enough to keep going with this and like actually worth all of the hard work. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you absolutely are. And it's nice to link to you now, Lucia, because if you know Lucia's work, it's global and award-winning. She's had covers of the Surfer's Journal. You've worked with National Geographic. She's done everything in big wave surfing, documentation of Hawaii, some of the best surfers like Kelly Slater, as well as incredible environmental work in the last kind of 6 years. And so, Lucia, for you now, seeing someone who has had, you know, cover shots on the Surfer's Journal and you know, a lot of kind of acclaim for your photographic work, how do you now look at the kind of new generation of photographers in Cornwall and the type of work that they're doing with the likes of Bella and some of her work, and obviously Luke and coming up?
Well, first of all, I think it's great. Well done.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, because when I, came to Newquay and grew up, I mean, there was about 3 or 4 of us longboarding. It was like me, Emma Skinner, and a couple of the girls, and like there was very limited surf photographers, let alone women. And I wasn't shooting at that point, I was just surfing. But like, it's really humbling coming back, and obviously I tore away from Cornwall, and my ambition to go further was my own personal journey. And going over to Europe and starting to connect myself with the ASP, which is now the WSL, and some of the professional surfers, I realised I needed to do, because really as a photographer, as we would all sit here and say the same, I would have thought, is it's really the connection between the photographer and the athlete or the subject. So in order to improve my career and to really drive myself, I also needed the subject to do that. So coming back now and based in California for some time and spending more time back in Cornwall now, and hearing Bella's story, and congratulations for such amazing work, because the struggle isn't necessarily being creative or doing the work. The struggle and the block is actually getting noticed, and actually even when you get noticed, having someone to give you the chance to get you on the cover, because we as females are the minority, and it's very much who you know too. So when you do get a cover, and whether that's Longboarder, whether that's Surfer magazine or WOS or Surfer's Journal, it's actually more rewarding, I think, because we know that we've graphed and we've done that, and no one was there to help. So yeah, it's more rewarding, and to come back to Cornwall and to see it thriving is really special, and to Chris, and seeing all old faces and our own careers is really special.
And one of the nice things about the first volume and this volume is that, of course, there's lots of longboard and surf action, but there's also quite a lot of cultural stuff. So a big feature in this is by a Californian photographer called Leo Hetzel, who famously took a great photo of Joey Cabell bullfighting in 1968 in Peru when they were down doing a surf contest, and all of the surfers ran in the bull ring to do a few runs, and the bulls had quite ground down horns, so it wasn't that dangerous, but apparently Joey Cabell did it with a lot of panache that day, and that's a great photo of his hibiscus flower shirt. And there's some really nice kind of travel photography as well from Spain there, and the work of a busker in Argentina. And so for you, Lucia, your work is beyond, in the days of you doing a lot of surf work, you always had incredible ability in travel photography and nature photography. What attracted you to want to go away from people to more documentation of the landscape and animals in the marine world?
Yeah, I mean, if we take it back to when I was working on tour, the reason why I gravitated to looking at what was on land, looking at the people, looking at travel, looking at the lifestyle around the surf community, is because actually that's what gave me my place in the global industry. At the time, there was a lot of men, and most of the men were concentrating with their 600s or long lenses and just shooting the action, which is great. Then there'd be your lineup shots, which would also make the mags. But I kind of found a niche at a time where not many of the guys wanted to do that, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed, to me, surf photography, surfing is not just about the wave; it's about where the wave is. How did we end up in Fiji? Okay, we had the contest, or we were doing a free surf shoot, but what about the firewalkers on the island of Benga or Inutha? And so I ended up starting to do that. So a lot of the surf industry came to me to employ me for different shoots or contests because I would be able to bring them a package. And it was something that other people weren't particularly interested in. And then sort of to add to that, for me, I think if I was really to analyse why I do what I do, it's the travel. So surfing brought me to these amazing places around the world. Those amazing places gave me so much and gave me this worldly view of culture and appreciation. And you know, the industry needs it all. So there's a little piece of the pie for everyone if you can really look past it and get out there and use your eye on that. So.
And with the environmental narrative of you know, the need for us to be as sustainable as possible, and how do you strike the right balance between getting out into the world and documenting the world and the changing world with the impacts we have as travellers, which we all want to do as surf travellers? We want to get the opportunity to go away and experience new cultures and places. So how does that weigh up with your type of work, and what advice would you give to people wanting to go into the world and do things that have meaning?
I think the world's changed a lot. I mean, when I was younger, sustainable travel wasn't really two words you put together. I mean, environmentalism was out there, but you know, I wasn't thinking about that really. I mean, I just got from A to B. And it wasn't until probably about 7 years ago that, well, after I finished on the tour, I moved to the States where the sort of hub of all the industry was, but I ended up working as a commercial photographer, film director, where I kind of gave up on the surf industry because it was just too painful. And I became a commercial photographer in LA, and I worked in film and did something completely different. The money was there. I mean, it was great, but it was, you know, it was almost easier than trying to be a surf photographer. And then it was actually what changed my perspective and what went into the environment side was I ended up learning what it was like to be on the sea. So instead of being in the water and having surf as a drive, I went on an expedition vessel and it took me to Siberia for a month. And then before I knew it, I was working in Antarctica, I was working up in the Arctic, and I realized this connection to the ocean was great, but I didn't have to be in waves. I could see the world with the same world in a different way. So back to your point, my career, my work went from surf into mainstream, which also at the time with surfing was just coming into mainstream. So it's a bit different now because surfing is seen in a mainstream industry. And then that sort of went into this environmental side where I saw so many of these fragile locations by default, and by doing this new kind of work, which was along the lines of documenting wildlife, documenting remote communities. And, you know, it really sort of dawned on me that this was right for me now in my part of my career. And so then when I came back to surfing, I realized that, you know, now I've flown to all these places and I've been fortunate enough to see what only maybe 1% of the world can see. Like, how do I keep these places fragile, and how do I carry on working in a way where I can deliver this back to the world or back to people? This is my job now. So it's further than a surf image, it's actually a responsibility. And that responsibility dawned quite heavily on me in certain times. Other times I just went with the flow. But I guess I would say that, you know, things have changed. For me personally, I think it's my responsibility, because I am fortunate enough to go to these places, to bring back the material to be able to expose these fragile locations to other people. What I do to offset that, I would try and eat less meat. I would, you know, be vegan where I can. I source locally, so trying to get farm boxes, and try and take less holidays, you know, potentially like surf holidays. So that's how, you know, when people ask me that, that's how I best explain it. And I think to finish off, each one of us has to do what's right for them, because there's so much judgment and so much now with climate and all these things. Although I can see it firsthand with the ice melting in the Arctic, the polar bears obviously are starving, they don't have a place to feed. You know, it's going to be a gradual change, and I think I need to bring those messages back and to try and offset it in other places.
Brilliant. So that's brilliant. So one of the big motivations with the magazine, when Chris asked me to help edit it, was you know, broad representation. So the environmental theme is massive, and I don't think we've quite allowed ourselves to go deeper into that yet. But we're only on volume 2, and it's an annual magazine. But one of the things that motivated me always was to make sure that there was a celebration of longboarding around the world. There was a good representation of different longboard communities, cutting edge longboarders doing cutting edge surfing, but also a celebration of the cultural elements to it. So this magazine has a great feature on the log wrap community, which is a platform founded by Ryan Cannon, which puts surf longboard videos to rap music, and that proved to be a bit of a sensation when he started doing it 12 years ago. And then there's a fantastic feature by Lauren Hill from Australia, who's Dave Rastovich's wife, about nose riding, and I think that's really a strong shot of celebration of the beauty of longboarding. I think that shot of Belinda Baggs. I mean, Lola, you, as a young 16-year-old, how special is it when you see, good nose riding like that? How does that inspire you in print form to know that, wow, that's a good example of what it feels like to be on the nose?
I think it's so amazing to have so many inspirational women around, and especially in all these mags. It's showing what you can do, and it just gives you way more confidence. And and especially in that photo, she's in the perfect section of the wave, and it just makes you realise that you can do it if you. And
you've so in the last couple of years you've seen firsthand not only good Cornish surfers, but the likes of Hawaiian Kalisa Keleopaha and American Soleil Erico win big events. What's so special about that blend of power and grace that those longboarders seem to have?
I think it's Soleil's really a big inspiration to me, because she's got such a good combination of power and strength, and she's just really inspirational, especially on bigger waves and smaller waves, and on the nose. And then Kalisa as well, with all her really light footwork. And yeah, I think they're definitely, for me, two of the most inspirational women longboarders to watch.
And then so with for your generation, with a print magazine, how what would be the most common form of your friends engaging longboard content?
I think definitely Instagram is a massive one. Everyone sees all the awesome videos on Instagram and gets really inspired by, for sure, and TikTok, Instagram are big ones. And then also it's just so great to have these magazines come out, which is just longboarding, and having loads of women as well. So yeah.
And you, so Lola had a really nice shot in the first volume as well. So that's I think, is that a aspiration, do you think, for your generation to still be in magazines?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's 100%.
So going back across the content a bit, there's a fantastic feature called Tango, which you wrote. And then, so what was quite nice with Bella is that she had this great footage of clips of photos from Mexico. And me as an editor, I kind of set her a writerly challenge. So what was it like when I asked you to write about the relationship between longboarding and tango music?
Well, I am a great tango dancer. No, it was actually quite funny, because I wanted to write this article about the relationship between surfer and photographer for a while, and I shoot with Beth a lot, who looks like me, weirdly enough, and people always think we're twins, but I actually have a twin, and it isn't Beth. And so our relationship has formed from surf photographer and photographer to really close friends now. And so I really wanted to write about how important it is to have that relationship with a surfer to get good art, to make good art. Similar to what you were saying earlier, it's you can be a great photographer, but if you don't have surfers who want to collaborate with you, you won't be able to get those real deep connections in the photos. And then I pitched this idea to you about the relationship of a surf photographer and a surfer being a dance, and it turned out that the theme of the magazine was dance or something. And so then it correlated quite well, and I was saying to you that I wanted it to be about how it was like a tango, and then it just ended up falling into place, really.
Really nice. There's a great example of, so it's interesting with, so some people are specialist writers, others specialist photographers, and what's quite interesting about curating this is I've been trying to empower the photographers to do the writing. But it's not easy to write, but everyone is a brilliant writer. Everyone does brilliant emails and WhatsApp messages. And we're all great at writing, but it's how you present the task. And I think if you frame it with certain people in certain ways, you can get really nice writing from them if it's maybe more question-based. But that moves on to you, Luke, with you've been doing. So Luke's written fantastic Surf Atlas book with, I guess, Stalton, and was the editor of Wavelength. Great writer, incredible photographer. For me, one of my favourite British photographers because of his ability to frame the surfer in the landscape. So always been a big fan of your work. But one thing that you're shifting gears at the moment and doing a lot more writing, and you've written a lot online for Longboarder, and there's two features that you've been involved with in Volume 1 and Volume 2 about trips to the Celtic Fringes with Mike Leigh. So first of all, what's it like kind of really starting to write more about longboarding, having been more focused on the shortboard community through your days as editor of Wavelength?
Yeah, it was always, when I was writing for Wavelength, it was more shortboard and alternative board focused. There was always some longboarding thrown in, but what I was always drawn to was just good stories. And I found, since doing more stuff with Chris and writing for Longboarder, the first issue, and then for online, that there's so many good stories in longboarding that I haven't seen anywhere else before. I think there's a couple reasons for it, primarily because it's not as widely covered outside of very specific niche longboard print, but also because I think longboarders are a bit more of an interesting breed, perhaps. I think maybe longboarders of a certain age now, when they got into it, I'm sure you can attest to this, Sam, that it wasn't a cool thing for young people to start doing in the 90s.
It was very uncool. It was so uncool that it was cool. And Luke will remember from my generation that the youngsters who got into longboarding, we were demonized along with the boogie boarders. But then as we grew up, we realized this is so cool. Everyone hates us and we were in our own world.
They still hate us now.
Yeah. So it's that. So it's very true, particularly of a certain generation, that you did grow up having to make an existence on the edges, a bit like boogie boarders have done.
For sure.
And found their niche.
Bodyboarding's another great example that there's so many interesting characters in that, because it draws in a particularly tenacious personality who wasn't drawn to doing the thing that was really cool and had to put up with a lot of shit that ranged from being had a go at to actually being bullied out of the waters in some cases. I think I've heard stories of even Hawaiian longboarders in the early 2000s getting sent in just because they were riding a longboard. And then of that contingent who took up longboarding against that backdrop, an even smaller number of them tried to pursue a career out of it, which was even more difficult because it wasn't like shortboarding where there was someone coming to give you money and a sticker and being here you go. You had to cultivate something alongside it, which I think is partly why there are still so many longboard surfer shapers, Kai Salas and Ben Skinner and numerous others at the very top level who have made these shaping labels alongside their surfing. And so that lends itself to stories too, because you can chat to them about their personal surfing practice, but then they got a whole load of other stuff to talk to you about too, which is how they've managed to forge a career in this niche thing. So from a writer's perspective, that's a real gift, the combination of those two things, I think.
And you've worked a lot with Mike Leigh, so there's a fantastic Finished Air advert here, a really much more substantive feature in the first volume and a smaller one here with a piece of Mike's poetry. But one thing with Mike is he's a particularly talented longboarder. But how special is it to work with the movement of a longboarder when you've got good conditions and good opportunities to frame that movement through photographs like you do very well?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really cool working with Mikey, definitely. I feel on the trips that we've been on, so we did one to the Outer Hebrides, which was in Volume 1, and then this one was to Brittany. And I've done a lot of shortboard trips, and you kind of just have to chase waves constantly, whereas with longboarding, it gives you the chance to slow down a bit. And because what he's particularly interested in with these trips is, so it's also with Seth Hughes, who's a filmmaker, and they're working on a project to make a series of films. Which you can watch from that link. Which you can watch from that link. You scan the QR code if you want to. It's about a lot more than just a surf trip. So it kind of links into exactly what Lucia was talking about. That I feel we're kind of in this era now where people are a lot more interested in surf trips that encompass a lot more of the culture and the history and a lot more about the place than just its waves. Do you know what I thought like really brought into sharp focus for me? There's that Surfline series, Maps to Nowhere. I don't know if anyone's seen it, and like it's amazing from a high performance surf perspective, but they've set out basically to go to all these waves where they're super secret and they don't want you to know anything about the place where they're going. And so the narrative is like constrained to just being like, we went to this place that you can't know where it is and we got skunked a bit and then we scored. And because they can't bring anything of the culture of the place in, because they don't want you to work out where it is, it's like kind of jarring. You're like, wow, they've flown, you know, they tell you how long it's taken them to get there, 45 hours of flights, whatever, and you know nothing about, so I feel like this is the opposite of that Mikey actually will sometimes be like, yeah, we'll go surf in the morning and then I want to go look at like Neolithic monuments for the rest of the day, which is great, obviously. Like, I mean, I never get bored of standing stones personally, but it's great, it's really nice, and because he, like yourself, Sam, is like a polymath. He's a poet and a lifeguard, and so he's interested in lots of other stuff, and so that's what the stories are about as well. Yeah,
and I think it's what's quite. I mean, you can tell from just looking through these pages here is all of these waves are like accessible, and I think that's one of the things I noticed when I shifted from just being an active young professional longboarder to starting to work within the surf media, making films, working with photographers, writing, that the beauty of longboarding was that you could document really accessible, user-friendly waves, and that was really empowering for people. Yes, I get a lot of satisfaction out of watching incredible tube riders ride incredible waves, but there's very few of us who could surf those gnarly waves. And one of the beautiful things about longboarding is some of the most appealing conditions are everybody can ride them, and that's, you know, and that's, is that something that you still get a kick out of, even though you're used to documenting spectacular airs and barrels? Do you still enjoy watching a good longboarder do a critical nose ride on a clean face?
For sure, yeah. I think that's a big part of it, and it frees you up on those trips as well to find like the most interesting compositions, you know, because you're going to find an amazing bay with an amazing backdrop, and it might not have the best air section or the best like 6-foot tube in front of it, but it will almost certainly have a wave like good enough to, when everything comes together, get like a nose ride in the pocket. So from a photographic perspective, that's kind of always what I'm looking for, to line up those elements. And working with longboarders, working with really good longboarders, gives me the opportunity to do that. So I think it's got that relatability for the viewer, and it also means that I can do the compositions that I want to do, like which is great too.
So there's any print form, there's like a bit of a balance between like the content and the advertising. And what's beautiful is when you get like a seamless mix. Growing up, I used to quite enjoy looking at like the edgy London fashion magazines where you couldn't tell if it was an advert or content or a feature. And I always dreamed that could be how surf magazines are, but not always so easy. But there's a great advert here, that one there, which Nathan did. So Nathan, that's absolutely amazing. And tell us about this amazing shot of somebody reading Volume 1 inside a pool.
So that is Mr. Toots. He was originally from the Philippines and moved to Waikiki when he was in his young 20s, and he is just extraordinary. He can walk better on his board than I can walk on land. It's phenomenal. So we spent, you know, a bit of time together in Lombok, and after spending many times in the water with him, actually shooting him on surfboards, it was a case of, how do you fancy jumping in the pool with a magazine and try and get some cool shots in the pool where we were staying? And he was like, great.
So did you come up with that idea to do
that? So in the previous week, there was another guest there, and she'd done some deep water breath training. So I did some fun shots with her, and she was drinking like cups of teas underwater. And so I was just like, okay, that's cool. And I said to Chris, I was just like, do you think Mr. Toots would be up for like getting underwater with a magazine and reading it? And I said to him about it, and he was like, let's do it. So yeah, it was really fun. I think we did it twice because the clouds went over, and then the light came back, and I was just like, Chris, have you got another magazine? So I was like, can you get back in and we can shoot it again? So he was great about it.
Yeah, because they are there. There's not many of those left. So if you've got one, it might be quite valuable in 103 years.
They're all at the bottom of the pool, aren't they?
Yeah. Pass it on to your
soggy and long.
I'm actually just going through a phase of realising how valuable well-kept stuff is. So I was looking at that cosmic leash because I'm curating an exhibition for the Maritime Museum on the history of surfing in Cornwall. And it's really, if you've got something that's got a good story, keep it and preserve it, because the people that have kept interesting things from the 50s and 60s, so some people have kept like Bilbo t-shirts from the late 60s and they're in great condition and there's great stories, and cosmic leashes are quite rare as well, which were kind of big in the 70s. And there was a period where Paul Holmes from Newquay was importing those made in Sennin and Penzance to Australia, because nobody was making leashes in Australia. So someone who had a pigsty in Sennin and a little factory in Penzance. So it just goes to show that we've been doing Cornwall surfing quite well for a while. And another thing, Nathan, is you've got that really good advert in here with Chris in it. So so what's it when you get given like a kind of a project as far as an advertorial kind of, you've got to get this particular shot, you know, how does that kind of change the way you go into a trip and plan a trip and do the shoots on each surf session?
I think probably, I guess it's similar to what some of the other guys have said. It's just that connection between you and the person that you're taking a shot of, and in the landscape you're in. You're trying to build that the whole time and kind of suss out what you can do with somebody, what they're up for, what they're not up for. And the people that were on that trip were, you know, incredible. They were up for kind of, whether it be 4 o'clock in the morning or late at night, or, you know, everyone's tired out because they've just either kind of like had something wrong to eat or whatever it might be. Then it was still a case of, you know, right, we can try this angle, and everyone was kind of pretty keen to do it, because I think underlying all of that was just their passion for A, surfing, and B, actually kind of, you know, if we get the right shot, how it does help kind of people who are younger, you know, how that kind of can help shape and influence kind of other people all around the world.
I'm still trying to find the double page shot.
I think it's quite at the start, I think. So but that one, I think it's like, if you can have a photo that makes you smile when you see it, I think whether you've taken the photo, whether you're in the photo, or if it just makes you smile, because it just represents to you what surfing's about, for me, that does it.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, whether you're Mr. Toots, whether you're Chris, me that's taken it, the people who are on the trip, or hopefully people in this room as well, you can see it and be like, yes, I know what it's like when somebody's on an absolutely wicked wave and you're there and you're just out with them, or you don't even know them and you're just like, woo! That feeling, if you can capture that in a photograph, is kind of gold.
Yeah, brilliant.
So
yeah,
I think, you know, if you can get everyone on that page, then you're on a winner, really.
Yeah. So that's another Leo Hetzel shot from some people in Argentina, which is quite striking. Quite risky as well to not run a surf shot in the beginning of a magazine, but it says a lot about the support and the trust of the narrative that unfolds. And a favourite issue of mine is this one that Stephen Thomas put together about the longboarders of Batu Keras, and I really love this particular shot of this longboarder on the nose there. That's a really great shot. So there's a lot of nice stuff to feast on in the magazine, and I think when we put together there's a really great feature by Andrew Carruthers from Australia. There's a great feature by Dom Stone. There's a really good feature written by Shannon Denny about the relationship between gardening and longboarding and tenure and nourishment, and that's really well written. And I felt like when we put together the first volume, it was very photo-led, and it was not so easy to get like the deep writing, whereas this we had a little bit more time, and maybe the quality of the writing is stronger. A fantastic feature by Daniel Blacklyons, who you might have seen in some Finisterre adverts lately, where they did a shoot in California. That's a woman from Senegal, photographed by Nicole Sweet. I think that this will be a fun read, and I think that's the important thing with magazines is they're not timeless, but they're certainly for a long time. Whereas a book is more something that you might be relevant for decades, and the internet might be relevant for days or hours. But I feel the aim of the magazine is you want it to be enjoyed for a long time and to be shared and appreciated. And that's a good question for you, Luke, because you've worked on magazines and books. And what's the difference between putting together Win Your Days of working on Wavelength and then doing your Surf Atlas book, and the different kind of formula for those different types of outputs?
I feel like the audience is a big thing. With the really nice thing about mags, especially fairly niche interest mags like that, is that you can really trust that your audience is going to be interested in exactly what you think they're going to be interested in. That you can kind of take it as read that they know a certain amount of stuff. Obviously, you want a certain level of a certain range so that someone could pick it up if they've been surfing 5 times or if they've been surfing for 25 years and still enjoy it. But you don't. With the book, I felt like it was still trying to capture a broader audience still. So that was one element. And yeah, the timelessness, I feel like with a mag you're curating, it's more, I'd say it's more like a music album. Like you're curating something to be enjoyed in that order, and it's supposed to capture this moment in time in the culture, and you want it to reference that moment in time. You want it to be timeless in the sense that people don't want to throw it away, they want to keep it, but you also want someone to pick it up in 20 years and it feel like it was about now, exactly. It to capture the essence of now. Whereas with a book, specifically the book I worked on, it was more like it was more of a reference book. I wanted people to be able to dip in and out if they were interested in a particular place featured, and also it to have that longevity, that it wasn't focused on this exact moment. So yeah, those are the couple things that come to mind.
And last couple of questions, I'm thinking, Lucia, with your types of output. So if you look on Lucia's website, she's got a great film that I love about a trip to Morocco. And I love that because of the variety of surfers on the trip and the music and the culture. So you've worked making films and as a photographer, which is your primary kind of output. But what's the difference between doing films and doing photos?
Well, filming or cinematography came quite naturally to me. I think as a photographer, we're self-made directors, so we all take ownership and we're all kind of our own, vision of what we want to capture in that moment. So, for me, photography grew into working with time-lapse, and I was working on film sort of in a B-roll camera sort of side of things, and, working on the moving image, so taking it from stills, and starting to understand the moving image. Now, not having been trained in that or really understanding it, photography plays a really big part in that, and you can really, naturally progress into it. So with filming, nowadays I'm predominantly a film director. So I work with teams of filmers, audio specialists, graders, and I direct and produce many films which range from, the Morocco film with the surf, to doing sort of more documentaries for athletes, to doing, some trailers and commercials, and then into conservation. So most recently doing a lot of, more sort of short form content films for brands or charities, more onto the sort of wildlife and landscape sustainability area. But with Morocco, it was a really fun one because the scope of work was to, capture the surfing, to be with the likes of Sam Lamroy, James Parry, who else? Chris Moore. So we had, quite a range. We had, sort of world champ, epic surf chick, to, James Parry, the stylish longboarder, to Sam Lamroy, he just crazy, just in with his shortboard. And it was actually quite an interesting one to bring all that together and then to sort of direct a film which sort of flowed. And the most important thing of that really, and the connection, was to bring the landscape and also the people and the culture of Morocco. And I think it came together quite nicely. And also just, really showcasing the journey. And one thing in film, as the same in photography in some ways, really the success is, bringing out it's all about the people, we all connect. to someone's story. Like, so for me now, I mean, I'm sure you can connect in your own ways of the things I'm saying. And in film, like really to, you know, identify a character, to really work with them and to really let them tell their story. You know, we all gravitate and we all want to know more because we're all interested in it. And I think the nice thing about filming from photography is that it's more collaborative. So one thing I found with photography is quite a solo kind of sport really in a way. Like, yeah, you know, you need to get access, you connect with the surfer, your subject, whether that's an animal, which I do most, you know, regularly now, or a surfer. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, it can get quite lonely. And with film, it really kind of brings you into a team. Yeah. And I think team and community is so important for our mental health, for longevity and sustainability in our careers. And that connection to me is why I love it so much. And I think, you know, also the storytelling side, where in film, you know, although in a photograph, you know, we're all good at getting that moment, and each photograph tells a story, but with film, you know, you can really, really bring that message out, and you can really, you know, get in deep and, you know, produce and, you know, deliver something which, you know, people can resonate with.
And then Bella, you've done a great film recently, and have you got aspirations to do more video work in your surfing?
Yes, I've currently got, which I keep forgetting to do. I went to Ireland last October with my friends who shape boards just over the corner, Ziran. Right. And they all surf like fishes and quills and alternative boards, and we wanted to go to Ireland to show a different perspective of the big slabs and barrels and things like that. And I've got a hard drive full of videos that I haven't even looked at yet, and we're hoping to make a film this year because they've already given me a surfboard to do it. So I've cashed in, but I've not done any of the work. Thanks for reminding me of that one. Me and Beth made a film in Baja last year because Baja does not have many women who go there.
And you won a London Surf Film Festival.
We didn't win it, no. We got. Thank you. A man won that one. Yeah.
You can rewrite history.
Yeah. No, we got trolled online a lot for that one by a lot of American men who were very annoyed that we went and filmed in Baja, which the same week a film came out of a famous longboarding male who was in Baja and all of that. But it was this beautiful thing of just women longboarding in Baja, and it's inspired me and Beth to want to go to more cold places and do that again. Yeah. So we really want to at some point, but when we can get all our ducks in order and make ourselves actually want to get that cold, go somewhere like Iceland or Norway and film women longboarding there, because you don't normally see females or longboarders going to these places.
Faroe Islands, be a good one. Denmark.
And then me and Maddie are actually hoping to start a pretty big project, which could take about 4, 5, 10 years, we don't know yet, about an incredible woman called Yvette Curtis, and about her insane life and everything that's happened to her, and just about identity. And you'll have to wait until it comes out because I can't even explain most of it because it's just such a spider web of stuff, but the constant is the ocean. And we're currently in the grant application processes for that. And so it would be Maddie as director, me as producer, and hopefully something like that is coming on its way.
Good luck with that. Yeah. And then, so last couple of things for you, Lola. I'm just thinking that what's really exciting for the generations who've seen the years of events. I mean, I've been trawling through Alex Williams's collection. I'm not looking for a reference of the Foster's Surf Masters from the 80s and all the different sponsors it had, and there were those events were fantastic. But what's really special with the longboard community is it has this brilliant mix of the kind of single fin events like the Mexi Log Fest, the single and unattached in the Philippines, the smooth movers. And then the big high-profile events that are more competitive, like the ISA event that you've just done in El Salvador, and the WSL events. And why is that cool with longboarding, that it has this world where, and quite a lot of the longboarders do both, don't they? Like Honolulu Bloomfield will be rocking it at the Mexi Log Fest, or as well as winning an ISA world title. Why do you think that's unique to longboarding, and what does that give longboarding to have those two different types of events?
I think it makes it like super unique to have like so many more events and like have like like super competitive events and then like non-competitive events. And I love being in like kind of both worlds. I like really enjoy it. And it's like really just amazing learning like all the different emotions you go through with like the competitiveness and like, but then going to like Mexi Log Fest, which is all about meeting people and like the community and yeah, and just like just so I think it's really cool to have, and it's like different to shortboarding. I think it's really cool to just have like so many different events to do and just switch up between.
And it seems like the smooth movers is worthy of like being talked about in equal measure to some of those other single fin events. You know, why is that a special event that happens every year in
The
Hale?
smooth movers is really, really cool. And like also it's like obviously first and second get the invite to the Mexi Log Fest, which me and my best friend Sylvia, but we got the spots last year. She got first and I got second. So we got the invite to the Mexi Log Fest, but we can't go because we've got GCSEs next week. So, but last year I went and I had a really good time. Like I'm hoping to go next year. But yeah, no, it's exciting.
And then, so lastly for you, Nathan, like, I just like, what's lovely about you is the energy you bring to the longboard scene when you come and document things. You know, what is it that you love about the longboard community in the West Country and being around them?
I just bloody love it. It's like you can be in the water and everyone's just like, you know, everyone's just friendly. Everyone's just, you know, up for kind of enjoying life. And, you know, you can, I think it's different to shortboarding. It's actually quite similar in bodyboarding as well. Like there's a real community of like, woohoo, you got a good wave. And, you know, it's that kind of excitement that comes with it. And, you know, I'll share you where I go. Like I'll tell you some good spots, come with me, or stick your board in the van, on the van, or to the side of the van, or whatever, and we'll go and find some good spots to go and surf or go and shoot. And I don't know, I think that there's so many tiny little spots in and around Cornwall that even don't get ridden to this day. So to go and find them with a longboarder, and there's something pretty magical about that, I think.
So do you think you could get away with a longboarder and boogie board monthly? So one like full slab on one shot and then a small wave California hang.
No.
Would that work? Like the yin yang?
Throwing a mat surfer and I'm there.
Yeah, I love how boogiers do celebrate, you know, and they're like, you know, you take the wave. No, you take the wave. No, you take the wave.
Unless you're the one surfer in a boog spot, then you ain't getting
Yeah, then yeah. As long as you're not a sup though, it's all right. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just think that whole, the vibe of it is just so different. And what I've never understood is the money in shortboarding compared to longboarding, because when you watch longboarding, it's art. Watching a 360 and an aerial, and we've obviously got Lucas Skinner, who's just phenomenal and is just incredible to watch. But when you watch, you know, a longboarder just moving up and down the board and just how, you know, it's just phenomenal. It's just, that is just pure and utter art. And I think, yeah, so I've never understood. I think plough the money into longboarding, because you see it on the beach, you know, everyone gets hyped up when, you know, obviously, you know, a board masters here, whatever. Everyone gets so excited, and there's a different atmosphere on the beach, I think, when you are watching longboarding. So, yeah, for me, it's that kind of art form, but general just level of happiness with each other. That everyone, you know, in the BLU, when we did the BLUs, and, you know, everyone's competed against each other, and, you know, that there's, you know, people are different on land compared to when they're in the sea, but there is still that camaraderie, you know, when somebody wins, that like, great, you know. And even look at Adam Griffiths and Ben Skinner, you know, kind of, they'll be chatting to each other before the heat, they go out, obviously they have the heat, and whatever happens, but they come in and they're, you know, they're still best buds, and it's incredible to watch. So.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the industry and the culture of all forms of wave riding is resilient, but what's quite exciting at the moment for parasurfing and longboarding is the chance for them to get into the LA Olympics, for LA Paralympics in 2028 and the Olympics in 2028 for longboarding. And those decisions will probably happen next year, potentially this year for the parasurfing. But that would be great, because that could facilitate the governing bodies of sport to spend money on longboarding and parasurfing like they now can with shortboarding. But yeah, that was a lovely way to end, Nathan. And has anyone, before we do the raffle, has anyone got a question they want to ask any of the wonderful crew here? Has anyone got something specific? Yes?
Do you think money being thrown at the longboarding industry would kill its joy?
Potentially. I think one of the fringe, kind of drivers of longboarding is the fact that it's like the kind of underbelly or the kind of, ignored, and that does motivate people to be more creative, and it's created a lot of fantastic individuals. So in some ways it could, but at the same time, I personally think that it could be exciting if longboarding gets in the Olympics for that element of the people who like the athleticism and the beauty and the dance of it. I think you'll still have all the good underground scene. What do you think of that?
I think it's a really good point. I don't think you'll ever outlaw what longboarding is to a lot of people, which is, 1, 2, 3 people going out, finding some random wave somewhere. Can be really good wave, can be absolutely terrible, but just having fun doing it. But I think what it would help to do is because it is so good to watch, and if you look at the recent ISAs, kind of doing the fundraising so that we can get teams of people out there, and kind of struggling to do that, compete with the other nations that are either there, have got consistently better waves. So I think in order for us to compete in a better way, I think, we do need more of that money that would help do it. But generally, I don't think you're ever going to, Mike Lay, you could give him £1 million or £10,000. He's still going to be an amazing surfer, an amazing guy, and incredible to watch. And he's still going to want to surf random locations and look at random statues. So, yeah.
It might mess with the boards, I think. I think you might get more of a return to high performance. Yeah, because all of a sudden people would be like, well, I need to, if there's money involved, then people are going to try and get that competitive edge. And I think longboard shaping is cool because they make them to be harder, right? It's like, make it heavier, make it harder to nose ride on. But
that's why people don't want to travel with longboards. So then we always find quiet waves because they're like, why the fuck would I do that?
I think it would change things for sure, but who knows?
It depends as well, if the governing boards of longboarding had control over the money that's coming in, because at the moment we don't get it from higher up. So there's no coaching. Sam's a coach, but there's not many.
I'm not a coach. No.
You coach the girls out of your.
No, I just freestyle that. That's just just tips when they're, But I don't do any coaching other than just if I see something useful though.
Well, it's very useful, yeah. But there's not much coaching in this country because of that, and so then the people have to go and get money in their own way, which tends to be influencing, rather than getting to actually just go and do their sport well. So if money did start to come in, it would probably mean that it gets to be used better if it was coming from governing sports rather than coming from car companies and random things like that.
Yeah, but it's amazing though how many different phases we've been through. I mean, we have been through phases where there's been some good opportunities with surf sponsorship and longboarding. It'd be nice to see that again. When I was sponsored by Oxbow in the late 90s and I had a full career with that, there were not many women sponsored by Oxbow. So I'd love to see that shift and know that now Oxbow are going to come in and support all the women they didn't support 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Is that 40 years ago or no? Another lifetime ago? But it's that felt, I mean, you remember, Emma, probably that time in the early days of 9+. Do you know what I mean? Who was funding the women? There was all these great women longboarders, but everyone was spending money on the men. And it's I think it would be great to see now an investment in women's longboarding that what didn't happen at a time when it could have with the talent of longboarding that was in our generation growing up. So that would be good. Any more questions? Last question before the raffle. Should we do the raffle? So where is Chris? Chris, do you want to come and help do the raffle? So thanks for all these fantastic, so big round of applause to the panel.